welcome back to the MMA Split podcast. I am one half of your hosting duo. My name is, of course, Matthew, joined as always by host, producer, bearded man in glory that you can't see because this is an audio only podcast. A beard so glorious it almost matches Jason Kelsey. Josh.
Yeah. I thought it's pretty ratty at the moment. I need a trim, but I keep putting off sorting stuff out at the moment. Doesn't matter. We're doing audio only. No one can fucking see it. I might as well lie and say it's looking really good at the moment. It's
Exactly.
definitely
You have
not.
the beard. You have the beard of Zeus himself.
Yeah, I reckon Zeus was a redhead.
We can go with that. He was Greek, so you never know. He also didn't exist, so I mean, in that argument, he can be whatever you want.
He was probably based
We'd
on
lo-
someone, eh?
we'd obviously love to have lots of nice little small talk, but as anyone is aware, if you've been watching MMA in the last week or so, we've got quite a lot to talk about. UFC 284, the fallout from UFC 284, a little bit of Super Bowl touch on action as well, because obviously Josh's team was involved in that, and that was on Sunday. We will touch on that at the end very briefly, because obviously it might still be a sore subject, so we don't want to rub it in, but lots of things to discuss there. Like the video, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Subscribe to the new platform, the new channel that we keep posting the links for on the old channel. We'll be moving across the next couple of weeks, something like that. Do you think?
Yeah. So I would say, not this week's, but next week's will probably be the last ones to go up on the old channel as well. I think that takes us just into March, right?
Just about. February is a short month, isn't it?
Thank God. I know I need me some more of that payday.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, new channel is pretty much going to be the old channel. We're just giving it a fresh coat of paint, a new start, shedding off some of our pity subscribers that joined us at the beginning but don't really follow MMA, and hoping to take along all of you that do enjoy our content and are here to listen to us talk about MMA, as well as a few other things when we go off subject. And yeah, 2 more weeks to shift across. All of that is out the way. UFC 284. It is time to discuss it. We're recording this on the Wednesday, not the Monday afterwards. And with some of the events that have occurred since, I'm actually pretty happy about that, because particularly around the main event, we've got a lot of afterthoughts that we will be touching on. We must start, though, with the fight. Volkanovski stepping up to lightweight, having a go against Makhachev, doesn't quite get it done, but puts in an amazing effort. Josh, I'm going to let you go off a little bit, and then I'll say my thoughts afterwards. So, what did you think of this main event?
I thought this was a phenomenal fight. And when you kind of factor in that Makhachev did have the shorter rehydration window as well, what that kind of led to is a little bit more kind of parity between the two. It meant the size difference, strength was less pronounced because obviously he had to pace himself a little better. And I know I said before the fight, I kind of expected Volkanovski might be the more powerful fighter. It did sort of look that way in the later stages of the fight. I'm gonna put that down a little bit though to Makhachev not being able to rehydrate as he normally would. I know that's gonna fucking suck. And I mean, I had it 4 rounds to 1, Matt. I don't know how close you had it. It was a close fight, but the 5th round was the only round I gave to my pick Volk. And what a brave fucking fight though, man. I just think he couldn't quite deal with the power of Makhachev when he was able to land. It really slowed Volkanovski down more than you'd want it to, or he would have wanted it to. Every time he's kind of shaking off, smiling, saying "good one." Yeah, like you want to kind of try and react in a way that you're not hurt, but the truth is you're just trying to cover for the fact that whatever you had planned, whatever you were trying to get off, just got interrupted fully, and you get caught short for a moment there, not really knowing what to do next. So if Volkanovski had been able to kind of mix things up a little more, been a little bit more braver, like trying to push into Makhachev on the fence, maybe look to take some takedowns early on just to keep him honest and keep mixing things up, could have been a closer fight, but I think Islam was just too good all around, man. I think I want to see him run it back, but I just think Makhachev a little bit bigger and just a little too good with his stand-up and his power that Volkanovski couldn't. He couldn't be the all-rounder that we've seen him pull off in other fights and really dominate. It just almost good enough to pull it off, be a two-strap champ, but just not quite good enough when you got to live in Islam's shadow. What do you reckon?
So I thought this was an amazing fight, a really good fight. And I saw a tweet that I think perfectly sums it up, which has said it wasn't a barn burner, it wasn't a slugfest, it wasn't a war, and it wasn't a bloody brawl. It was a high level, high stress, high tension, razor close mixed martial arts contest. And I think that is the perfect description of this. It's one of those fights when if somebody was to ask me, if I look back at, at the end of the year, I think I'm going to consider this as one of the fights of the year. But I don't know if this would be a great fight to show like a newbie to MMA if you were trying to get them into the sport, because I think so much of what made it a great fight was not knowing how it all felt.
Yeah,
The
you'd have a
story
hard time
going
cutting
into
up highlights to really sell it as fight of the year, you know?
And it's more about the story. It's the fact that there was this expectation that Volkanovski was going to get, a lot of people thought he was going to, get dominated. Even people who thought it was going to be a close fight accepted the fact that we might see him just do to everyone else, do to Volkanovski what he's done to everybody else. And there was the possibility that Volkanovski was just going to be too small. And it was just going to come down to the first time that they clinched. The fight was basically going to be decided there. And so the fact that Volkanovski had the crowd behind him and had these moments throughout the fight and looked so good in different moments and finished the fight the way he did, and in many ways, to my mind, and we're going to be touching on all of this, and I kind of want to talk about the fight itself before we talk about some of the things that have happened this week. But really, in my mind, and I thought this watching on Sunday morning when I watched this, he cemented himself as the pound for pound number one for me, regardless of whether he got the result, because I think he is a better fighter than Makhachev. I think if their weight was to be equal, I think Volkanovski would handily beat him. Really, I do. And obviously that's not the reality we live in, but for me, I feel like that should be what the pound's about. So in terms of the fight itself, how did I score it? I had, when I first watched it live, not live, but without, watching it without knowing what had happened, I had it 3-2 for Makhachev. I was surprised that so many people had it for Volk. Really surprised. Joe Rogan did a fight companion and was 100% convinced Volkanovski had won. As in, like, they've got bets going on, people are handing money over, like 100% convinced. And here's the thing, having watched it back, rounds 2, 3, and 4, I think you can actually go in any direction. Now, round 4 sounds like a weird one, but here's the thing. Makhachev didn't get credited for a single submission attempt in that round. He technically had Volkanovski's back, but he didn't really do anything with it. And Volkanovski landed a lot of strikes against Makhachev while he had his back taken. And we've seen fights and we've watched rounds in the last couple of years where people have been in that same position. The person who has the opponent's back hangs on rather than trying to make the most of it or advance position or attack a submission. The person whose back is taken lands a significant number of strikes before the round ends and clinches the round. So I understand. It's not how I viewed it, but I can really understand why a lot of people feel that Volkanovski won it. And
Well,
I think it's
a close fight.
Strong argument.
It's a close fight, but honestly, apart from the 5th round and the 3rd round, I think you have to be like, it's a close fight, but Islam gets the nod in that round. I do see the case you make for round 4.
Also, round 2, he drops him in round 2.
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
You know, so it's
at one point I thought he was winning round two. Not by the end of the round, but Volkanovski looked really fucking good throughout the entire fight. Um,
well, I'll tell you just
it's
to
just one of those
interject.
things because his right if Volkanovski had won, then whether he goes 45 or 55 next, we like you got to feel pretty good that if it's a close decision like that, but Volkanovski gets the nod, that Islam's going to get a rematch, which means we get to see that fight again. Now with Islam winning it, I'm like, fuck, man, are we going to see this second fight, or are they going to kind of forbid Volkanovski from stepping up until we have a new 55-pound champ?
Well, I'll tell you just to go kind of look more at what I think did end up losing Volkanovski the fight, because even having watched it back, like when I say that I can see what people are talking about, I would still trust my initial reaction, which is that I thought in the moment Makhachev won it 3-2, and uh, honestly, that's I think 1, 2, and 4, and that's my personal opinion. Although super close for me, the real thing that I think let Volkanovski down early on in the fight, and I'm sure that obviously Makhachev tiring and flagging towards the end assisted this, but I do think if you look at the Thiago Moises fight, and if you look at what Volkanovski was able to do in the fifth, I think the easiest way to deal with Makhachev's wrestling is actually to fight fire with fire. And I think Volkanovski realizing that being a little bit more willing to engage and be offensive in some of these situations, in some of the grappling situations, rather than just entirely trying to get out of them, does actually give you a few avenues to have opportunities against Makhachev.
Oh, absolutely.
Moises showed it.
Creates offense. Also takes away the opportunity for Makhachev to counter with a big shot.
Yeah, and I also think first couple of rounds, certainly, I think Volkanovski starts really fired up. I think once the body lock gets the body lock is cinched on from Makhachev, I think he's initially really worried about what the ground looks like. And I think there was a real fear from Volkanovski of this guy can submit you, you don't want to get in certain positions. And I think that surviving those positions and realizing that he can defend them quite effectively change his viewpoint on the fight and change his viewpoint on getting taken down. And I think that shows in how some of the positions and some of the risks and counters he was willing to take in that fifth round to stay on his feet. I think he kind of just felt like, okay, this guy doesn't have that slick or take a jiu-jitsu where I've got to be super concerned. He's more of a established position and control kind of guy. And I'm showing that I can defend those situations that he likes to be in. So in terms of a rematch, like I really think Volkanovski would do a better job of taking the mistakes that he made and applying them in a short time frame than I think Makhachev would.
True, but I think I was saying kind of the same thing, not as eloquently, but if he had have kind of taken it to him in the clinch and with his takedowns, could have been a different fight. It makes it on paper a more winnable fight, but it does mean he does open himself up to the risk of being submitted to a greater extent, particularly early on, and assuming the rematch is going to be somewhere with where they're not basically starting the fights in the morning local time and he gets the opportunity to rehydrate. Not gonna wear as much, you would assume, gonna be a little bigger, have a little more power. I need to see the rematch. I need to see the rematch, but my thinking is Makhachev might just be a little too strong with his stand-up game, and maybe just a little too big for Volkanovski to really wear on and dominate and bully. So I think it's going to go 2-0, but I want to fucking see it.
Well, Josh, if you believe certain reports, it's possible that hydration was the last of Makhachev's issues on Saturday night.
Yeah, I doubt
it. I don't want to talk about that quite yet. We will get to that. What I want to say is this. I don't know if a guy has ever come out of a loss having moved up and had his stock rise this much as Volkanovski has. I mean, He's everyone's favorite fighter. People, I've got more hype about him now than they did after he beat Max for a third time in a fight that he got the decision against. If anything, Makhachev is the one that's lost some points here.
Which is a problem because this is not going to incentivize him to take this rematch I need to see. Also, like, what the fuck is wrong with people? Like, we knew what it was going to be like before the fight. We knew this was a good fucking fight. We knew this was, in all likelihood, going to be one of Makhachev's biggest challenges. No question. And yet somehow people are going to fucking give him shit about it after the fight. Unreasonable.
The reason is that I think the worst thing that for Makhachev, if you reverse the first and the fifth rounds, if Makhachev's first round was the fifth round and Volkanovski's fifth round was the first round, people would feel differently. Because the story would be Volkanovski starts brilliantly, knocks him down, is raining elbows in the first, knocks him down again in the second, but then Makhachev rallies and applies his wrestling and grinds out the fight. And nobody would have these questions. But it's like the Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz situation. It's because he got wobbled and it's the end of the fight. And I kind of do get the argument. And I'd say the difference here is obviously this was a much closer, more competitive fight than the Diaz fight, where Diaz obviously got fucking annihilated for 4 rounds and then caught him with a lucky punch at the end. And obviously Volkanovski, you can't say it's a lucky punch because he wobbled him in the first round and he got a knockdown with a similar right hand in the second round. So this was obviously something that he'd worked on and was able to apply at 3 different moments in the fight. Rematch, here's the issue with the rematch. Right now, Volkanovski is a superstar, even with the loss. Everyone loves him. He's everyone's new favorite fighter. He's getting more respect than ever. He stayed pound for pound number 1, which we'll be discussing in a second. And he's got a really fun fight against Yair Rodriguez lined up, where he could be even more of a superstar if he wins that fight. And then you have the ability to maybe have a rematch down the road after they've both got other wins that rebuild the hype again.
True, but firstly, with the how the fight ends, people forget. I feel like a lot of people have mostly forgotten about Nate Diaz against Rocky. No one fucking remembers Mark Hominick against Jose Aldo anymore. You know, people don't really fucking talk about how Anderson Silva really fucking pulled it out of the bag against Chael Sonnen. It, you know, it all just goes down as like a fucking a one or a win or a loss on the record, and you kind of move forward. But now is like the best time, or like not now, but as immediately after the Rodriguez fight for Volk is the best time, in my opinion, to do it, because after this, I don't know how long Islam's going to carry on without Khabib in his corner. He did say it affected him for this fight.
He said it to Khabib.
Huh?
When Khabib tried to give him, Khabib tried to criticize him on the phone when he rang him after the fight. And Islam, I think Khabib said something like, "You should have done better, brother," or "You should have been better in these positions, or you should have done this." And he said, and I think Islam's response is, "Oh, well, you weren't here to tell me."
Yeah. You know, it's definitely going to have an impact. Losing the guy that really was, you know, your mentor, your fucking role model. He's the one that kind of trailblazed for those Dagestani boys that relocated down to AKA. I don't know how long he's going to carry on fighting. He's got a lot of potentially sexy fights on the horizon. You know, I assume that the winner of Chandler McGregor is going to get a title shot, because, you know, fucking why not? But I don't think Beneil Dariush excites him. I don't think guys coming up like Gamrot, you know, I'm sure they like scare him and they excite him on a level of like, that's a great fight, but not in do I want to carry on doing these hard ass training camps for like some money and no you know, no real opportunity to renegotiate and to really make myself like more marketable as like a professional athlete. I don't know. I don't know how much money even fucking
Well,
moves them, to be honest.
I think here's the thing. I actually think the Dariush fight is more interesting now. I I
Like
I
as a fan,
I
it's a
think
fucking
Dariush has a
sick
chance.
fight. It's a
But
fucking sick
Dariush is
fight.
fighting Oliveira in May, almost certainly, apparently.
Oh shit!
So I think it could be.
Okay. Yeah.
So
No, I
here's the
remember
thing:
that being made actually.
if
Well,
Dar
being rumored. So yeah, go on, go on.
if Dariush wins that fight, I think dead certs he has to fight Makhachev next, because it's like Jesus Christ, if you haven't fucking earned it enough as it is, and then you go off and beat Charles Oliveira.
Yeah. Do you want a Tony
Yair's,
Ferguson? Because this is how you get a Tony Ferguson.
yeah, exactly. And I think Dariush, from what I saw against Gamrot and some of the things that I think Volk exposed, Dariush's understanding of jiu-jitsu, the way they use leg locks. Again, there's just certain things that I think Dariush would do that would make it really interesting. And I don't know if he beats Oliveira, man, and I think he's got a damn good chance in that. I think that's a hard fight for Makhachev, and it would be that nice balance where it's a hard fight for Makhachev that I think he would feel was earned and would get recognition, but it's probably not as hard a fight as he might think going against Volkanovski for a second time would be. And I think you could almost say the same thing about Volkanovski versus Yair. That's a hard fucking fight after what we saw on Saturday, man. That's a really hard fight. But it's
Yeah.
probably not as hard a fight as fighting Makhachev a second time.
Well, just knowing that Yair Rodriguez fought pretty much all of that fight completely outside his skull. He got caught in the first round and then doesn't really remember anything up to adjusting the triangle at the end of the fight.
We will. Oh man, Josh Emmett though. We'll talk about those in a sec. To finish off on the main event, because there's been some. I'm so glad we did this on a Wednesday. There's been some drama since, because well, for starters, Makhachev didn't get the pound for pound number one, which I'm actually delighted on, and not because I don't like Makhachev. Although I'm starting to think I might not like Dagestanis. I think I might have a prejudice. I don't root for any of them, and I think that I don't think that's good.
You root for Umar Nurmagomedov?
Yeah, he's fucking exciting though, man, and he's not beating any of my favorite fighters. It's not the Dagestanis, man. It's just like Khabib and Islam. They had to just fucking run through like so many fighters that I really like watching. You know, Khabib, Poirier,
you enjoyed that Gaethje fight though, didn't you?
Alain Kinter, you know, Bobby Green, Dan Hooker. That's I think why I don't like Makhachev. I just feel like, oh man, there's poor guys, these poor good fighters, man, that just had like this big slap in the face of where they really are that they didn't necessarily deserve.
Yeah, I don't know. When someone keeps taking out my favorite fighters, that's usually the quickest way to become one of my favorite fighters.
Yeah,
it's like the opposite of all other sport for me.
Yeah, so that happened with me with Oliveira. Definitely happened with me with Volkanovski in his last fight against Max, and to be fair, the Ortega fight as well, which was fucking awesome. So it does happen, but it's just, I don't know, something about Islam and Khabib didn't do it for me. But he's not pound for pound number one, Islam. How do you feel about this, Josh?
I feel like the pound for pound list is a joke. Doesn't matter. Never has. However, if we were going to pretend that it did mean something, I can see the argument both ways. I have a real hard time caring, but I can see the argument both ways. Would a 160 something pound version cutting down to 45 the day before of Islam Makhachev beat Volkanovski in a fight? I really don't know. I really don't fucking know. But like, just the fact that people care so much about the pound for pound as to put any kind of fucking stock in it at all. I mean, they put female fighters on there from time to time, and
the females have their own pound for pound list.
Didn't they used to have a combined one?
Maybe it's split at the moment though.
I just remember people complaining about Ronda Rousey being on there higher up than other like male bantamweights and being like, "Well, fucking make them fight them." Like, obviously they're not going to do that. But do you know what I mean? It's like it's not a clearly defined scoring criteria. Everyone thinks there's like a common interpretation of what pound for pound should mean, but people kind of have their own takes on it when you put them in specific circumstances, like when you query, like, should Ronda Rousey be higher than TJ Dillashaw?
Well, my feeling on pound for pound is that it should be like if everyone weighed the same weight, what would the rankings be based on like not just skills but what they've accomplished? So, for example, when you look at the UFC and you can say, okay, well, and really, I don't think the pound for pound should matter too much when it comes to champions. I think it's much more important to have, for example, like a Dustin Poirier has been on the pound for pound list, even though he's not at points, during those times where he's been on it, being a champion. Or like Max Holloway, where it's like, well, okay, Max Holloway could very easily be a champion in a different weight class. It just so happens that one of the other all-time greats he's fighting at the same time and is just a bit better than him happens to be in the same weight class. But if we were to kind of like still break down who we think the 10 best overall fighters are, we would still maybe include him in that overall list. I think that's where pound for pound should really.
And I just want to push pause a second. Do you know who votes on the rankings and the pound for pound lists?
I always thought that it was the UFC, but I've recently discovered today that it's like a completely different panel of people.
Yeah. It's a variety of different people or organizations, many of which have no business voting on these kind of matters. Very few of any of them. I'm talking about the entire list now. Are really credentialed in any serious kind of way that you'd be like, yeah, you should be on this panel. And quite a lot of them don't even submit votes or respond. And when the I guess I'll call it the ballot for them to submit their votes or their rankings for each category, it comes with notes from the UFC telling them what they think they should do. And on the samples I've seen submitted, they pretty much just copy what the UFC put in the notes. So, it's a fucking joke. It's an absolute joke.
Why did you pause that? That was some really good stuff for the podcast.
No, I mean pause. I haven't paused the podcast. I'm pushing pause on. So I want you to go back to what you think pound for pound it was. Well, to be honest, yeah, I very much concur with it. Here's the thing, though. Invariably, we would get to things where you'd be like, actually, I don't know. So, like, I think some people want to put it more as, like, let's compare kind of strength of records kind of thing. And that's why you could have a combined one with female fighters on there as well, sort of slant on it. I like to combine that an element because I honestly think that it's easy to misjudge someone and overvalue them if you're seeing them against less than elite talent. So I think strength of schedule is kind of important, not important enough for it to supersede everything else. But do you see what I mean? Like there's always going to be disagreements, right? It's not like a very clearly defined thing. It's still very subjective.
Everyone has their own idea. Everyone has their own idea of it, and that's the problem. That's why, but that's also why, like, in many ways, the pound for pound is stupid. In many ways,
that was my concern, is that you were given a very thought out response, and I worried that you didn't realize that, like, it's not so much whether or not the idea of the pound for pound list is worthwhile. It's in its current iteration with the jokers that we have submitting the rankings every week when they do it. It's completely asinine. It's complete fucking dog shit. It's just worthless. There's no value to it at all.
Yeah, in its existence, yeah. but in terms of what I think it should be,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which
It could be
again
a
is
cool
me
thing.
deciding my own rules. Listen, every division should be only judged on its own merit.
Yeah, we
That's the
should
thing.
we should
That's
do
the
our
real
own
reality.
like top five every month. Do our own pound for pound.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you know what the real hard thing is, though? And actually, this is the folly with my idea of okay, trying to match like skills and stuff like that. You can't really compare it because you don't. If okay, well, what if Francis Ngannou was 155 pounds? Well, then he probably wouldn't fight like Francis Ngannou.
He'd probably be quicker. You know,
Yeah.
it's
So it's a stupid, and it's like, well, Brandon Moreno was 6'5", will he be 6'265 pounds, man? And he's Mexican. He'd probably look like Cain fucking Velasquez, man. He'd probably fight like Cain fucking Velasquez.
yeah, yeah. I hope he gets taller. When he gets fatter.
The only true way to settle this is UFC 4, which does give you a mode where you can do any weight, and you can just have Francis Ngannou fight Davison Figueiredo. And I watched a YouTube video of a guy who decided he was not going to quit until he found a way to beat Francis Ngannou with Davison Figueiredo. And it took him about 300 goes, but eventually he just landed a spinning kick in the perfect spot.
Fair enough.
Ngannou.
Well, it's the other thing with pound for pound. You know, you look at a guy like Francis Ngannou, he still has human knees. You know, does he not deserve to be number one on every pound for pound list just by the miracle that he's still able to walk and move around and stuff, and then his knees haven't given out yet, or his back?
Well,
Honestly,
that's very considerate, but I don't think he's going to be any. He's not in the UFC anymore, so
yeah,
I don't think he's on any
but...
pound for pound list.
Oh, maybe we shouldn't limit our pound for pound list to one organization. Ours could be a universal, considered. What's
well, it can't be too
fancier
universal.
words?
We can't start including fictional characters.
No, I obviously
Really?
just real athletes.
Your number one can't be the Hulk or Goku. Though Goku would be a great fucking. Goku probably is pound for pound the best fighter in his universe.
Yeah, but we're gonna do the real ones.
Yeah. Can we talk about the texts? Can we talk about the tweets?
Oh, go on. I don't know much about this.
The Dan Hooker tweets.
I really know the highlights of what Dan Hooker was kind of making accusations about IV rehydration, which is a no-no. That is banned.
Oh, it's a big no-no. It's a 2-year suspension no-no. It's you have done very, very bad things. No. And here's the thing. Volk took the loss very well in the cage, but he, before these tweets came out, kind of sort of hinted at this when he was talking to Ariel Helwani. The podcast or the interview got broadcast 12 hours after it was recorded. So by the time it was broadcast, the tweets from Dan Hooker had already come out. But you can see that Volkanovski was aware of something because he asked his manager first, can I say it? And the manager gave him the nod. And he said, and he mentioned an IV. And then Dan Hooker drops these tweets where basically he says, I think the first one says, you cheating fucker, do you really think you could come to Australia and rehydrate using an IV without us finding out? Try and prove me wrong. Bet you can't. And then a few other ones, all basically just saying cheating scum.
How do you prove you didn't use an IV?
I know. That's the only side of this that's really weird. And then clarifies that he's talking about Islam Makhachev. Now, Dan Hooker takes losses. That whole team has an ethos about when it comes to taking losses and about being dignified and you win or you learn mentality. So I find it so strange, like so hard to believe that this is sour grapes. The flip side of that is that we've never seen Volkanovski lose in the UFC. So he might be a gracious winner, but gracious winners can also be bad losers. Somebody who's been a bad loser or gracious in the past can then be just like you're not automatically set to always make that decision. But it feels strange, man, for Dan Hooker to tweet that, knowing the consequences of a slander like that if it's unfounded. And for Volkanovski to, in an interview before those tweets come out, cross-check with his manager if he's allowed to bring it up and say IV, and then does so after getting a nod of approval. It seems really fucking strange, man. Like, it's the only thing I can say, it's the behavior that you would associate with somebody that is 100% sure that they can back up what they're saying.
Yeah, although they could also have been led astray. You know, there might be someone that's convinced that it happened and convinced they have evidence, but I don't think it happened. He didn't look like he was super rehydrated, and I think that would be a really stupid one to try and get away with in this day and age. So, yeah.
Yeah, but there was other dodgy things as well, man. Even on his weigh-in, he was on the scale for like a second and a half before they leveled it, and the scales were still moving. There's a few things that were off, that were a little weird. And it was documented that he was having a really bad weight cut. Michael Bisping was informed during the weigh-in show to just be aware that there was a possibility there was a likelihood, I think they said, that he was going to not make weight, and to be prepared for that on the broadcast. So there's a few things that were really weird about it. Like, man, you can't prove a negative. Dan Hooker,
fair enough,
those
but
side,
I gotta be honest,
have proof.
He did look like a man that had a bad weight cut. So if they're like, yeah, he had a bad weight cut, I'm like, all right. The scales thing's weird, but also like it'd be even weirder if he was managing to get away with that sort of shit in their backyard. I don't know. It's weird. Like if they were doing if they were fucking up the weigh-in, just fucking do it. And if he needs extra time to make the weight, just do it that way. But
well, Australia's commission only allows one weigh-in. They don't allow a reweigh. Yeah.
Oh. Well, it was weird that they did it so fucking quick then. They didn't make him just get back on the scales. But you know what?
Listen, I'm with you, man. Like, it's you can't disprove the negative. There has to be proof, and with something like that, a guy has to be found guilty. The accusation isn't enough, but it is food for thought, and it definitely ties in with this idea that Makhachev hasn't. Like, the press from this hasn't been good from him, even though he was one half of one of the best fights we're going to see this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Weird one. I've got to be honest, like, Makhachev probably frustrated that, people are getting at him. Probably frustrated it was a closer fight than would have been ideally comfortable. And obviously frustrated doing it without Khabib. So I don't know, like, it all just sort of makes sense in my head that they would all be acting this way and saying these things. I don't believe he's used an IV. I guess I would need some I would need actual evidence though. If I'm just being asked to kind of go on what I saw, in terms of his performance and everything, it doesn't look like a guy that rehydrated with an IV. Looks like a guy that had a real shit fucking weight cut.
What I do know though is Dan Hooker is certain enough that he used an IV to tweet it. I think we should. I think all we can say on that is watch this space.
Yeah.
But until there's more information, Makhachev's the champ. He edged the victory. Dear God, we should probably start talking about some of these other fights, because we had a great co-main event and we got an interim featherweight champion. We've touched on it already. Yair Rodriguez was coming up against Josh Emmett, who had walked through hot coals and fire to get his title shot. Looked like death on the weigh-ins. Was probably affected as Makhachev by the shorter rehydration period, and then had the wonderful pleasure of having Yair Rodriguez rearrange his organs for about a round and 3/4.
Yeah, he did not have an answer for that body kick.
Body kick was insane, dude.
Yeah, it didn't matter if he blocked it or if he didn't. Looked like it hurt just as much.
And Yair is so switched on, man. I mean, he made one false move in the entire fight. Two actually, when he got clipped and the flying knee, which got him taken down, which he still converted into a beneficial position.
You know he
Aside
doesn't
from that,
remember
man,
the flying knee though.
yeah, he got flashed pretty hard. I mean, Josh Emmett, that man. I mean, it's dynamite in every single punch that he loads up.
Yeah,
That guy can hit.
he had one path to victory, but it was a viable path.
Yeah, and he almost he had his opportunity, man. It's just it's the way the cookie crumbles. You know, Yair is tough. He was able to take the punch. I think he's obviously worked a lot on his jiu-jitsu, and it's not just the fact that he got the triangle in the second round, but the ability to be aggressive with the guard, the way he was able to use the elbows, stay reasonably safe, really didn't eat any shots once he hit the ground. It's obviously something that from the, you know, when you look at the Frankie Edgar fight, he's worked on for a really long time, where he's accepting, like, I might get taken down, but I'm going to make sure that, like, I can still attack in that position, and I'm going to stay reasonably damage free in those positions as well.
Yeah, for sure. You know, starting to look like a real dangerous fighter. And to be honest, if he can fight barely conscious, and still be dangerous at varying ranges, and more or less, bar the flying knee, fighting a good fight, you know, subconsciously, if he's got it drilled in like that, I really believe he could be a fun fucking fighter and a real danger to Volkanovski. I think this imminent unification bout is going to be fucking awesome. And I guess I want Volkanovski to win that because I still want to see the Makhachev rematch. But Yair Rodriguez, fun fucking fighter. I root for this guy.
Yeah, it's a fun fight, him and Volkanovski as well. It presents a lot of interesting problems. I think there's a lot of dangers with Volkanovski. It's the kicks. It's the kicks that he'd have to eat to close distance.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that we have to mention with the Yair as well that's really impressive is, you know, this performance comes, he's not had what you would describe as a consistent run. I mean, he's coming into this on the back of a one fight winning streak where the fight was over in 4 minutes due to an injury. Had to wait, what was that? That was in the summer. 6 months between that. 6 months previous to that fight, he loses to Max in an absolute war, and hadn't fought for like 2 years previous to that. So, you know, for him to be that sharp and that comfortable with some of the counters and combos he was landing, without necessarily having the octagon time in the last year or so, I thought was really outstanding.
Yeah, he looked pretty crisp. And considering how hard he got hit, fucking fair play.
The Volt fight, yeah, I'd pick Volt to win. But it's, you know, it only takes one jumping this, spinning that, and all of a sudden, you know, Volkanovski could be on the ground. So I like that fight a lot. I think if the fight ends up being in Mexico City, I think he's got a much better chance. I shouldn't say really good chance. I think he has a better chance. That's the only thing I could see is maybe like a Cardio Kane situation happening to Volkanovski with altitude.
Maybe.
If they did the fight in Mexico City.
I think he probably goes Vegas for this one. And then Abu Dhabi for his return to 55. Yeah! I want to see it.
Abu Dhabi would be a fun place for that rematch. I think that would be only fair. And they always go to Abu Dhabi in October. So we could almost have a provincial date for that fight.
We can turn it around in that kind of time frame.
Yeah.
Get him in Yair in June.
I think you might be able to do that. I have a feeling that you could turn those both guys around relatively quickly. Not like super quickly, but like 3 months' time.
Yeah.
I think that could be a summer fight.
Money, money, money,
Uh,
money.
Josh Emmett, commiserations. You put together a hell of a win streak, man. You ate a lot of shots to do it. You pulled out a few comebacks. You,
A
this
lot
is
of
tough, man.
comebacks.
Yeah, this is tough. But you know, you gave it your best shot, man. What else? What else can you say?
Yeah. Uh. Yeah. So's Josh. All right.
Right, we talked for a long time, but we got to talk some more about this next guy because, man, Jack Della Maddalena is a dangerous man. Dangerous man.
Yes, sir.
That was that was nice, and it was also really disappointing because I picked Randy Brown to win, and I thought Randy Brown looked so good for about 2 minutes. He looked so calm, so comfortable, so loose, and just poor head movement. Pressed against the cage too easily. Should have been looking to circle out. And I mean, just over erratic head movement, chin up in the air, not looking for the follow up right. Jack Medlandlena, yeah, that was complete blah, blah, blah. JDM, as we will now call him, as I will now call him, just perfect. Just stalked your opponent, closed the distance, applied pressure, landed a good, you threw a good combination, went low, then went high, and great finishing instincts to choke him out. I mean, top top 15 level fighter already, no questions.
Yeah. Yeah. This was very nice. And obviously you had me for the pick on the main event, so this ended up splitting because of the draw we have yet to discuss. But Jack Della Maddalena moving on up in the world. Randy Brown, I feel like we'll get another good opportunity next.
Do you know what his issue
he
is?
had? Well, yeah, fucking 4-fight win streak before this, so I don't think it'll take too much of the shine off. What's his issue?
It always seems to get caught in the first round. Happened against not
Trinaldo.
Trinaldo. Happened. I've seen it with a few of his fights. How he lost to Vicente Luque. It looks like he's one of those people where he kind of like needs to get like hit a couple of times, and then he sort of like stops being a little flashy or kind of like, you know, calms things down or focuses a little bit more. And generally after that, he tends to perform quite well. But it's a big issue, man, because Jack De La Maddalena, you're fighting a first round finisher with that kind of power, who's looking to be aggressive. You got to be able to be switched on straight from round one. Otherwise, you're always going to take a step back when when you get to this level. You still there?
Yeah. I'm just thinking, because to be honest, like he's got some good wins. Wooly Alves, Brian Barberena, Cowboy Oliveira, Brian Camosi back in the day. I hope this Jack Della Maddalena loss will age well. Because to be honest, his other losses, for the most part, pretty decent fighters. I feel Randy Brown still has an opportunity. I mean, he's so fucking big for the division with his frame. I think inevitably.
It's not so much it's not the names he's beaten with him. It's just that when you see his boxing, it's so fluid. It's so nice.
And long.
Technically, and he fights long. And, when he gets into the groove and he starts styling on guys, he really just looks like a high level boxer. It's a little bit like, is that featherweight with the like weirdly short body and long arms? Woodson. Something Woodson.
Oh, the sniper.
Yeah.
Fuck. I want to say Charles Woodson, but I don't know.
It's not. I can't. It's not coming to me. But it's the same kind of thing where it's like you see him fight, and it's like, oh man, there's like, it's so smooth. The boxing is so fluid, and then he just doesn't quite have a couple of these other things yet that just sort of glue everything together and take you past a certain level.
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean. I was gonna say as well, like having that super long frame, having to be a bit skinnier, it probably does impact how well he can take a shot. It probably does impact to a degree how fresh he can be. I wonder what kind of fighter he'd be, because 6'3" is still pretty fucking big for middleweight. I wonder how that extra 15 pounds would sort of sit on him. Well, I guess effectively it's gonna be more like 20 pounds, isn't it? So.
Well, he's got work to do. Jack Della Maddalena, I think, is fighting ranked people next, and
Yeah.
I think he beats a lot of ranked people. I mean, welterweight, there's a few older guys that I think are on the way out that I think he beat already right now, based on what we've seen. Exciting name, big name, and credit to both guys. They had a drink in the bar after their fight, so
Nice.
respect. Both seem pretty chilled. Randy Brown tweeted, said he's gutted, but big thanks for Australia. Well done, Jack, and said fighting him was awesome. So it seems all good spirited from there.
That's nice.
Let's run through some of these other fights. Justin Taffer. Man, I really like this guy, so it makes me happy when he both makes weight and then wins with a knockout like that.
Yeah, he ran through this fight, so we can too. Lovely little walk-off knockout.
Best line of all time. I don't care what anybody says. If the man must reach, I have to teach. So good.
I missed
so
that.
good.
I was skipping through.
Yeah, he said he saw him overextending with his right hand. He's just like, if the man must reach, I have to teach.
Fair play.
It sounds cooler in his New Zealand accent though.
Yeah, it's gonna look good written on the wall of the toilet at work. That's what I know.
Nice. I just got that. That was clever. Very nice.
You.
Very nice. Off the fly as well. You get some style points for that one. Let's talk about the fight opener. This was probably the second best fight on the card. No, third best fight on the card, but it was still bloody entertaining. Crute and Mennefield, real war between two guys that both have fundamentally large holes in their games, which can be entertaining.
Yeah. Although Mennefield really was, I was surprised Crute survived to the end of this fight. To be honest. That being said, I did give him the second round, so I actually had it as 29-27 rather than the draw. But I have no complaints with the draw. Second round was close enough. But I thought Mennefield was doing a pretty good job. Obviously, if he hadn't have done the cage grab, and I think Goddard was right to take a point. But if he hadn't have done that, then he wins that fight on two judges' cards. So,
yep.
He reached, Goddard teached. Yep, used it right. And
Jimmy
was a fucking shame.
Jimmy Crute is so fundamentally bad at striking.
Well, he just shouldn't be doing it. When you're getting fucked up like that, and your fucking coach is telling you to not do that anymore, and fucking start taking him down, and you just fucking stand there going like, yeah, I know it hurt, but like, I reckon I can hurt you back.
Oh mate,
you know what, Jim?
Did you see the?
Not smart, pal. Not fucking smart.
Did you see the part where? Oh god, did you see the part where it was when he was getting really wobbled and it looks like he was about to be finished, and he gets wobbled a couple of times, and rather than like shooting for a double leg or putting his hands up, he just sticks his tongue out at Mennefield, and then immediately as he does it, gets punched and rocked again. And it's like, gee, that's such a cool thing. And if you're in a barn burner and you can actually like slip and counter in that moment, do it. But like even there, man, don't stick your tongue out. You're getting punched in the face. Fucking do something. Don't just stand in front of him.
Yeah, I think if he had fought a smarter fight, there's no way he takes as much damage in the second round, and then will be able to dole out enough ground and pound to just make that round clear. And also, whether or not there's a cage grab in the third round, if he fights a smart fight, Alonzo Mennefield just isn't really on his level. This was a very winnable fight for him. They said they're going to run it back. I kind of hope they do. Like you say, this wasn't a bad fight.
I thought this was a good fight.
Yeah.
I found it entertaining. It was a lot better
Um,
than anything on the prelims.
and I kind of think, how good are these guys? What is their real value? Um, in the UFC. Probably running this fight back.
Yeah, it's not like they've got any other pressing matters to attend to.
No, like one of them needs to go on a Paul Craig-esque tear, and then I can really start to care about him. But
It does feel like the guy who submitted Paul Craig should definitely be trying to implement his ground game a lot more.
yes.
You've had two lessons. You've had two large American black people punch you very hard in the face in your last two fights, but neither of which you've won. Both of which have given you brain damage. Learn.
Well, he stopped drinking, so that's half the brain damage fixed, not repaired, fixed, or slowed, I suppose. Slowed's the right word for it, to be honest. Yeah, fuck it. Let's see him run it back. That'll be fun.
We've talked for a long time, but we got some prelims to talk about. So, Josh, do you want to play the one sentence game?
Yeah, let's do it.
One sentence, please, on Pedro versus Modestas Bukauskas.
Apparently, he was injured. Bukauskas is my guy. He wasn't the injured one, but it's hard to do that with one sentence. Should have just said apparently Pedro was injured.
Nice bounce back win. Fair play.
Yeah.
I heard some dark shit about what Bukauskas has been through in the last couple of years, so fair play. Kulabau versus Bagdasarian.
Great comeback.
Fucking awesome submission. Awesome back take. Really cool back take.
Yeah, very slick, very quick.
Clayton Rodriguez versus Shannon Ross.
Missed weight.
Fucks him up anyway. Jamie Malarkey versus Francisco Prado.
One-sided but fun.
Efficient and disciplined.
I like that.
Jack Jenkins versus Don Chanis.
I already used one-sided and fun. Fun. Yeah, it was fun again. I'm not great at this game. You're pretty good though. Go on.
I felt misled. I was promised leg breaks.
Come on, it's not how that works.
I know, but they made such a big deal of it during the fight. Oh, he's had 3 leg breaks in a row in his last 3 fights. I'm like, Jesus Christ. And then does kick fucking hard though. Don Chanis was not enjoying himself.
Nah.
Loma Lookbone Me versus Elise Reed.
Fucking one sentence, and I can't even come up with a few words. Jesus Christ. Yeah, good, solid performance.
No one had money on the submission.
That's fair.
Blake Builder versus Shane Young.
I'll go and I'll set you up.
Squeaked it.
Oh, I was going to do the Bob the Builder thing. Nah, let's move on. We're moving on.
Zubaira Tukhugov versus Elvis Brenner.
Really, really close fight.
Bullshit, I lost money.
Soz, bro.
You live and you learn. You live and you learn. That is the breakdown of the card. Is there any news that we have not already touched on built around our UFC 284 discussion?
No. I'm trying to think if there was anything we were going to talk about, or if that was just what we were talking about pre-production with the pound for pound that we then talked about at the time. Um,
and the tweets, which we also then talked about at the time.
yeah,
Uh,
I think I'm good. I
only
mean,
major news I can
I've got
see.
a picture. I got a blag, so I'm not rushing for
Gam
that.
I got some news. Gamrot is replacing Dan Hooker to fight Jalen Turner at UFC
Yes.
285. I'm actually pretty. That's a really good fight. Really good fight.
Yeah, all good things come
I'm
to he who waits.
I'm way more excited about that fight than I was about watching Dan Hooker fight Jalen Turner.
Is that because you didn't want to see Dan Hooker lose, or is that
It's a
more
hard fight.
because, yeah,
It's a hard fight. It's a really hard fight. Really, really hard fight against a fucking 6'3" giant
yeah,
who's long and powerful and probably better at grappling than you are. I hated that fight for Dan Hooker. He doesn't need any of that tarantula. Tarantulas are very scary.
all right, fair enough. I am also excited for the fight. I was more excited for it before because I love watching Dan Hooker fight, but I will settle for Mateusz Gamrot. Not a bad replacement at all. Some say trading
Nice.
up. I say trading similar. Give Dan Hooker some love.
Works for me. Works for me. That's all the major news I want to talk about. And we've got a pick show to record, so I think we will bid our audience adieu. Like, subscribe, comment, all of that jazz. Out for the pick show, dropping either Thursday or Friday. And as always, by Dave, by Laurie, by Trifo.
Bye, Laurie. Bye, Dave.